these past couple of years, film photography has made its way back into the game like no tomorrow. Literally almost every single one of your favorite photography YouTubers and my favorite photography YouTubers have made some sort of video or makes videos relating to film photography. And honestly, I can't be mad at it. Film photography is freaking amazing. But someone like me who also saw those videos a couple years ago and decided that maybe I should try it, there was a few things that I really didn't know would happen with me just jumping right into it. So in this video, I'm gonna kind of be giving you guys a few tips before you decide to make that dive into film photography, and just a few other things to consider, especially if you're transferring over from digital photography over to film photography. And there's a lot of things that I wish I knew about film photography before I decided to just make the jump, especially because I did it so impulsively. Before I get started with the rest of this video, I do want to ask that you guys give this video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your opinions that you may have throughout the video. It really helps me with building this channel, and it really helps the algorithm with pushing my content out there. Okay, so the first tip I want to start off with is that if you're switching over from digital photography into film photography, make sure that you are extremely comfortable with your digital photography work already. And so I say this for a couple of reasons. The first reason being is that once you start to get into the film photography world, you start to really like the way that film photos look. And so that makes it to where when you start to take digital photos again, you start to kind of get upset that your digital photos don't necessarily look like your film photos. And this is something that I personally struggled with and sometimes am still struggling with. I love the way that the film photography photos that I take come out, but sometimes I try to judge my digital photos based off of a film camera's work, and that's just not the case. Digital photography and film photography are two very different things. Even though they're really similar because they're both photography, they're very different in the type of things that you see. And you can always try and mimic that film look, but film will never be digital and digital will never be film. So you have to really learn to appreciate the digital work and your film work. So definitely get really comfortable with your digital work, especially if you're switching over from digital to film. The second tip I have is that to make sure you research before you buy. Especially if you are a big YouTube watcher like me, you scroll through tons and tons of videos and you watch some of the best YouTube photographers use some of the best cameras that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And so sometimes you start to feel like if you need that sort of quality of work, you have to have that same camera, and that's not necessarily always the case. Sometimes you really need to dig deep, find the best camera for you. You may not necessarily need to start off with the $2,000 camera to, take some portraits of your friends while you guys are hanging out, or just to take some night photos when you are at events. So I would definitely recommend doing as much research as you possibly can before you just jump in and decide to buy a camera. Cameras are very much a long-term investment, and with film cameras being way more popular than they were a few years ago, it's probably an investment that you want to be smart about before you just make. The third tip that I have is that film is expensive. There's no going around it. There's no trying to chase for the most crazy deals because you'll probably be saving like a few pennies sometimes, if even. You have to understand that film is expensive, and if it may not necessarily seem expensive individually, through time the cost adds up. So this has to be something that you really start to consider before you start taking film photos. Are you ready to put out $10 a roll to take maybe 10 shots? If that's not something that you're willing to do, then maybe film photography isn't the best thing for you to jump into right now. You probably want to consider some other things, like maybe investing in better lens for your digital camera, or maybe investing into a Fuji digital camera so where you can get as close to those film Fuji colors as much as you possibly can without necessarily having to spend money on a film camera and buying film. And another thing is that there are tons of different films. If you're shooting at night, you might need one sort of film. If you're shooting early in the day, you might need one sort of film. If you're shooting in the afternoon, you might need one type of film. So there's just so many options, and they all come at different prices. So you have to be really invested into this hobby or into this passion to know that you're going to be spending that money. But if this is something that you really love and something that you truly want to do, then that really shouldn't be a problem. You just need to be aware that it's coming. You have to make this decision pretty early on, whether you are going to self-develop or if you are going to send in your film and have somebody else develop them for you. Let's take, for instance, my local film shop. It costs $15 per roll that you develop, and a roll of film costs about $10. So technically, each photo shoot, my camera goes up to about 16 pictures. So every 16 pictures, I would spend $25 just to get the pictures back. That was not an investment that I'm willing to make, especially somebody like me that takes a lot of pictures. So I decided to make a pretty hefty investment in buying all the tools that I needed to develop my film photos at home. You know, if it's more professional and more important work, I'll probably send it over to a lab and to get it developed. But for my day-to-day stuff and my day-to-day photography, I think it's just a lot more cost efficient for me to just do it myself. This is a decision that a lot of people have to make when they start taking film photos. How many photos are you going to take? If this is something that you're only buying or only doing when you go on vacation, then it's probably, you know, more cost efficient for you to just have somebody else develop them. But if you're somebody who's shooting once, twice, 3 times a week and you're using multiple rolls per shoot, then you might want to consider doing self-development, at least up until a point where it doesn't even matter if you're spending money to get it developed, because your time is more important than your money. This is a process, and this is something that takes a little bit of time to learn, but it's not complex. It's just something that you have to understand, that you either have to pay for someone else to do it or buy all the stuff so that you can do it yourself. I personally choose self-development. That's the decision that you're going to have to make when that time comes for you. Final tip that I have for you is that you have to be comfortable in being uncomfortable. With film, you can't see the pictures that you take when you take them, so you have to really trust your gut or just really know your stuff. And so sometimes you're going to be in these scenarios where you just are really guessing what you think is the best lighting, what you think are the best settings, and you have to just trust your gut and to do that. But that being uncomfortable really teaches you how to be a better photographer, because you make a lot of better decisions when you're allowed to just sit back, be patient, and to just really think this scenario out. Being a film photographer definitely sucks when you get a bad shot, but you're gonna get tons and tons and tons of bad shots. But those bad shots eventually make you a better photographer. And if this is something you're serious about, just get ready. Okay, and that kind of brings me back to the end of these tips. I definitely want to emphasize that these are just personal opinions, and these are tips and things that I wish I considered a little bit more before just diving into it. Do I have any regrets? No, but would I have made a better decision before diving in had I known these? Probably. If you guys have any other tips or opinions, please leave them down below. I'm pretty sure that anyone who watches this video is probably looking for as much information as they possibly can before making this big decision, so all the opinions that you have might be important to the next person. So if you can, also leave a like, sub to the channel, and until the next one, peace.
Violent as fuck, niggas willing just to kill, just to get a couple bucks in. Who gives a fuck? Anybody give a fuck? Who gives a fuck? City where we come from, violent as fuck, niggas willing just to kill, just to get a